On this super review, let's take a look at the YinFu MD51 in-ear monitors. I'll be honest, at this point, I don't have a lot of information to share with you about the YinFu. These guys reached out to me. They sent me a pair of headphones without really telling me anything about them. I can't find them on Amazon, can't find them on AliExpress. If you want to buy them, I think Facebook is the only outlet, which is interesting. And these things are not cheap. These things cost around $280. And from what I can tell from the Facebook listing, this thing is a 5 balanced armature set. That said, look, I can't really tell anything else about it. So let's go ahead and open up the box. We'll find out what we get inside the box of the YinFu MD51. And then I'll give it a listening test and I'll compare this to, I don't have anything this expensive, so I'll hold these to the highest standard I have, and I'll come back and I'll let you know, is the YinFu MD51 worth 280 bucks, and is it worth shopping on Facebook for? It's actually a decent spinning box, but it's a little large for my table, so it was kind of handicapped there. But here we've got the YinFu MD51 Private Custom. I think this is a very handsome box. I think the headphones inside also look pretty handsome, but that's what we're gonna find out. We can do a quick tour of the outside, probably not gonna learn much, but let's see, around here in the back. All right, we know that we've got the MD51 model. YinFu has a second model, the MD31, and I've got the 51. I don't really know what the difference is between them. Maybe like a different number of balanced armatures. Like I said, the 51 has got 5 balanced armatures, at least from what I can tell on their website. Maybe the 31 has only got 3. It comes in a number of different colors, and I've apparently got transparent ones. We know that it's got an MMCX connector produced by YinFu. Not a lot here. Let's see, on the Facebook page, I was actually able to find out that they have an impedance rating of 26 ohms, and okay, that was the only additional information I was able to find out. So I guess we're just gonna have to crack this thing open and find out what's inside. All right, so we got the YinFu MD51 completely unboxed, and that was one of the most attractive boxes I've ever seen in my life. It also came with this pretty attractive little carrying case. This is maybe a little bit bigger than I typically like for traveling with my IEMs, but it is very well made. It's got this nice soft material on the inside, as well as a couple of alcohol pads in case you need to get drunk. I did give it the sniff test. It's not leather, but that's not a big deal. You do also get, of course, a nice set of tips, including, it looks like you get 4 pairs of these standard silicone tips, which have sort of a moderate to wide bore on them. You also get 1 set of foam, standard foam tips. You get a second set of foam rounded tips, as well as you get 1 set of these double flange tips. And I think that's kind of nice. You can experiment and find out whatever kind of fit you like best for you. For, you know, this price range, I think it's important to come with a lot of tips, and well, the MD51 is delivering. I forgot to mention you get these instructions, which tricked me. I almost thought they were the best instructions of all time. Then I turned it around and I found a bunch of words, which is a little annoying, but they do have frequency graphs that show the difference between the 51 and the 31, at least according to their measurements. And looking here, it looks like the main difference is that the MD51 looks to be a little bit flatter frequency response with a little bit more treble. Now, I don't have the 31s here to compare, but I will at least expect some treble out of these things. Then we get to the cable, which is, I think, a pretty good looking cable, but it's a little stiff and frankly a little wiry. I don't know, it's not my favorite cable, but it's also definitely not a bad cable. On the good side, we've at least got these preformed ear hooks up here with MMCX connectors. and they're piped into these, I think, pretty handsome looking buds. These buds are made out of an all clear resin. It is not quite as transparent and clear as something like the Shozi Neo CP, but it is definitely a clear than I've seen on some others, and you get access to, visual access to those BA drivers in there. And in fact, I can count. We've got 1, 2 there, we've got 3, 4 there, and then we've got this one big honkin', probably the bass driver, also visible in there. And then as well, you can see this internal tubing that's been carved out from the BA drivers into the nozzle. So look, that's about as much as I'm gonna find out about these headphones without listening to them. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these things, hook them up to my Walkman, run these things against my reference library of music, some De La Soul, some Michael Jackson, some Alice in Chains acoustic. If you haven't heard that album, by the way, I do have a link to it on my YouTube profile in a playlist. Listen to that Alice in Chains live performance. It is so nice on the right headphones. So yeah, I'll come back and I'll let you know, how do these things stack up to my most expensive in-ear monitors, and are these things worth 280 bucks? All right, let's talk about the YinFu MD51, which I've been listening to for the past couple of weeks, and my conclusion is that these might actually be my favorite sounding earphones that I've got. And okay, they're $280, so maybe they should be, but man, these things sound good. That said, there are a couple of disappointments that you guys gotta know about. And we can start by talking about the build quality, which isn't necessarily one of those disappointments, but just talking about the buds, I think they're a nice, handsome looking, completely clear acrylic. Yeah, I don't know. I really like this look and being able to see through the earphone and see the balanced armature drivers inside of it and see, pretty clean wiring. There's also this slightly shaded coloring on the outside that I think is pretty tastefully done. It's kind of interesting though. The Shozi Cross Neo CP basically goes for the exact same aesthetic, and I think it's just a lot better done on the Shozis. These are fine looking, but I think it's maybe just the overall shape of the buds on these are, well, the shape is a little bit large. And as far as comfort, I didn't really have any issues. They don't fit as flush as some other IEMs, but noise isolation, sound isolation on these things, actually pretty strong. The cable that these things come with, well, that's not this cable, actually. The cable that they come with is a fine cable. It's a little stiff and kind of wiry for my taste, so I actually threw on my own favorite aftermarket cable. Another small complaint with the stock cable is that it does have a chin cinch, which is nice, but the chin cinch on this thing just kind of seems like an afterthought. It's almost just like a rubber band that's wrapped around the cable. It's not becoming a $280 earphone, in my opinion. That said, look, it's the sound where the YinFu MD51s really shine, and maybe you could say they sparkle, and some people might even say that they sparkle a little bit too much, but generally I think that these things just, versus basically everything else I've got, there's just an added layer of clarity and detail that I'm not getting in any other IEMs, and that includes things like the BGVP DM6, which is a $200 IEM. Lots of detail in those things. I think these things definitely edge them out. The YinFu is also a very sensitive in-ear monitor, which is to say that basically on any source that you play them, they're gonna get plenty loud. I mean, these are probably the loudest IEMs I've got. That sensitivity does mean that on some sources, there's gonna be a little bit of hiss, and there is, a slight amount of hiss on my Sony Walkman, but it's barely noticeable. I have to be looking for it. The sound signature I would describe is sort of neutral-ish, but definitely leaning on the bright side. So if the DM6 is a little bit neutral but leaning on the bass side and the lower mid-range, this is sort of like the opposite tilt. And for me, that's kind of what I like. There's definitely a lot more upper mid-range and especially treble emphasis on this headphone. That's not to say that there's no bass with these things. The bass that's here has got a nice impact to it. It's not emphasized at all. The mids I would describe as sort of airy and forward, or vocals definitely come through as forward. And the mids they're definitely airy, and I wouldn't describe them as thin, but they don't come across as like kind of thick and soupy the way that they do on the DM6. But really it's the treble where you get a lot of emphasis here. And for a lot of people, I'm gonna be honest, it's gonna be too much treble. For me, I'm a treble head, and even for me, I think that these things are a little bit on the bright side. With the stock silicone tips, the MD51 is definitely what I would describe as a very sibilant headphone. You know, with songs where there's not sibilance in the recording, it's not gonna be an issue, but for songs where there's even like a hint of sibilance, this thing is gonna really show them. And maybe if you're looking for an earphone to, you know, master your own music recordings and you want to make sure there's no sibilance, well, you'll definitely detect it with these. But if you're stuck like me listening to music that other people record and you've got music that's got sibilance, you got to be careful with these, especially with the stock silicone ear tips. Now, the good thing is if you throw on the stock foam ear tips, it actually cleans up that sibilance quite a bit. And it doesn't really come at the expense of the rest of the treble energy. It's still nice and clear, still nice and detailed, but you are kind of relegated to using foam tips. And if that's okay for you, I think you're really gonna like the sound of these things. And if that's not okay with you, I don't know, man. If you're at all treble sensitive, you might hate the MD51. If you're kind of treble deaf, you might actually love the MD51. And if you're like me, you just kind of, I don't know, like a glutton for punishment, and you like just a little bit too much trouble. You like that little sting. With the foam tips, I think the MD51 is just a really nice, satisfying sounding headphone. If I had to score these things, I'd give them a solid 4 stars out of 5. And look, again, I think this is one of my best sounding headphones, if not like my best sounding headphone. I would almost, I'm tempted to use the word objectively, even though I've not measured anything, and that's definitely not something that I can defend in any way at all. But just the level of clarity and the level of detail that's coming through in this headphone to my ears is clearly a step above anything else that I've got. Now, it does come at the expense of, well, you got to use foam tips if you're not a glutton for punishment. And even then, if you're treble sensitive, I think it might be too much for you. But for me, I really like the way these things sound. The cable, it's a bit of a bummer, especially at $280. But the good news is it's MMCX, you can replace it. And also some good news is that these things showed up on Amazon. If you're interested in checking out the YinFu MD51, of course, I've got links in the description down below. While you're down there, you can hit the like button for the video if you liked it. You can subscribe to the channel, and then I'll see you in the next super review.